Welcome into the FTN Bet Super Bowl Player Prop Special live from Radio Row here in Phoenix. And the Caesars SportsBook said the excitement right now is palpable, and the game is only a few days away. We're going to dive into really anything and everything you need to know regarding player props for the big game. I'm going to set you up here, and I know a lot of my audience comes from a fantasy background. I know some of that group hasn't necessarily dipped their toes into the water of sports betting. I'm going to make it easy for you today. It doesn't have to be difficult. It can be easy. So we're going to run through some stuff. Of course, I want to set up the game as well for you, my thoughts, and I'm going to give you a prediction. It's probably going to be wrong. That's okay. I'm going to give you a prediction regardless. So that'll be coming at you here in the next roughly 30 minutes or so. Before we dive into that, though, I did want to point out FTNBets.com. Go head on over there. Our friends over at Caesars Sportsbook have a lot of great offers depending on what state you're in. So go check it out, FTNBets.com. Hook up the offer, get in, and you're going to hear all the best plays to make on Caesars Sportsbook when it comes to player props here on this show. So, again, the stage, it's the two best teams in the league. Since you have teams like Buffalo, Cincinnati, of course, they're in the mix, but it's Kansas City and Philadelphia. The two number one seeds, the quarterback of his generation already in Patrick Mahomes, the up-and-comer in Jalen Hurts, the narratives of the Kelsey brothers facing each other, of Andy Reid facing his former team, of Nick Sirianni facing his former team. You know, that story has kind of come out here in the last few days, but he was actually fired by Andy Reid. Now, it was the previous staff. It wasn't as if Sirianni was existing on the staff. But when Andy Reid came to Kansas City, he moved out Sirianni because he had David Culley coming with him. So there's so much to this storyline. But when it all comes down to it, the game's going to be played on the field, and these are two darn good teams. You have the generational, and I said it. I said the G word, okay? Generational quarterback in Patrick Mahomes. Already. 5 years as a starter, 5 conference championship games, 2 MVPs already, an unreal talent at the position, with the explosive offense that didn't necessarily need Tyreek Hill to be just as good as they were last year. Travis Kelce, another player, an all-time great on the field for them. The run game. Who would have thought that Isaiah Pacheco, an afterthought on day 3 of the NFL draft, would be able to go out there and do what he has done, especially down the stretch for this team. Be that thumper for the team. And actually go out and contribute in the passing game as well. It's so much. And, you have this cobbled together group of wide receivers almost held together with duct tape. Juju Smith-Schuster, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Kadarius Toney. Of course, we won't have McCole Hardman in this game, but you still have Justin Watson. These guys, Sky Moore, who made a huge play in the conference championship game in the special teams to help get this team into the Super Bowl. And then on the other side, Jalen Hurts, the dual threat, the point guard out there running this offense for this team. A.J. Brown, the difference maker that he has been, double-digit touchdowns this season. Devontae Smith making huge plays left and right. Of course, you also have the run game there as well. The run game, right? Miles Sanders. And I'm going to talk about the run game. I have a hypothesis on how this game may unfold based on the prowess of both of these past defenses in this contest. But Miles Sanders, Kenny Gainwell, even Boston Scott making plays. And let's not forget that you have one of the most dangerous running quarterbacks in the league in Jalen Hurts. But Jalen Hurts a little banged up heading into this. Jalen Hurts not 100% and has not run fully since injuring that shoulder. So all of these storylines are fascinating. And the two best teams in the league, I mean, hey, they were the 2 number 1 seeds. They were the de facto favorites as we started the playoffs to make the Super Bowl, and here we are, so evenly matched. Right now, Caesars Sportsbook has this at Philly minus 1.5. They on the season were 10-9 against the spread. Now Kansas City 7-10-1 against the spread, but underdogs. That's a rarity in the Patrick Mahomes era. Underdogs in this game. The money line actually has this at minus 125 for Philadelphia, with plus 105 going to Kansas City. Now that's kind of interesting there. Almost essentially when your line is 1.5, you're dealing with pretty much close to a pick 'em. So you may actually have slightly better value playing the money line, especially if you're somebody who thinks the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win this contest. The money line is certainly in play, but either way, minus 125, still not terrible if you do like the Eagles to win this contest. However, what I think is probably the most interesting, and there is a psychological element to this one. If you're relatively new to sports betting, I will tell you that casual bettors like two things. They like overs, and they like favorites. Betting underdogs, betting unders, not commonly something that we see from casual sports bettors. And when this opened up, the over-under opened up for this game at 49.5. Well, as of right now, Caesars SportsBook has this at 51. We are having a lot more casual money. As we're getting closer to the game, a lot more casual money is coming into play, and that tends to drive this number up. Now, Philly has gone over in 10 of 19 games this season. Only 4 teams actually had a higher percentage rate on the over, and it's 4 teams that probably you wouldn't suspect. If I said name the 4 teams, I don't think you could do it. I'll flat out. I don't believe in you. I don't think you could do it. Vikings, Bears, Lions, and the Cardinals. So maybe the Lions, maybe you got that one because, yeah, they were, they were their defense, especially early in the season. But still, it's not an easy thing to get these overs, especially in a game where there's a lot of money coming in on the over. So I'd keep that in mind here. Now, Kansas City went under in 11 of 19 games, so they were pretty close to this as well. I don't know if these are going to be your best plays. Be bluntly honest, especially if you are coming from that fantasy football background or maybe a DFS background. But likely, if you're a fantasy football player, I know coming into sports betting can be a little bit intimidating. When you see plus 130, minus 115, what does this stuff mean? But it isn't actually that complicated because what it all boils down to in a lot of these betting markets is picking that over or picking that under, picking that winner or picking that loser. And we can do that by just simply focusing in on the players. So that's the whole point of the show that I want to do today, is diving into that. An area that I don't often bet, but I think is a fun one to get some action in on this game in particular, is anytime touchdown props. So this one, hey, touchdowns are sexy, right? They're sexy. People love the touchdown. But touchdowns are notoriously tricky to project. They can be very fickle. They can be very tough to get your money in right. However, I do think there's a really good way to go about this. So let me teach it to you, all right? We're going to start with Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce's odds are minus 113 to score a touchdown in this game. We know Travis Kelce scores touchdowns. In fact, he has 3 in the playoffs so far. We can convert that minus 113 into probability pretty easily. And no, don't go anywhere because I'm not going to do anything fancy here. The implied probability for minus 113 is 53%. So in other words, those odds are saying this guy has a 53% chance of scoring. Now we can take that and compare it to projections and figure out if it's a good bet or a bad bet if we were going to bet an anytime touchdown on Travis Kelce. And the number one thing I want to do when I'm betting is get an edge. Number one, first and foremost, I want an edge on the sportsbook. Sorry, Caesars. I want an edge on the sportsbook, though. And how I determine that with normal, receiving yards, rushing yards, it's pretty easy. You can see projection, line, and compare. Touchdowns a little bit tricky. However, we do project fractional touchdowns. I know that's an old complaint of people that often had when it came to fantasy football projections, for example. Why are you projecting 0.5 touchdowns? You can't score 0.5 touchdowns. Well, guess what? You can't, but that's not what that means. 0.5 means there's a 50% chance of scoring a touchdown. That's plain and simple. That's what it means. So we can take projections and then compare it to implied probability and figure out whether or not it's a good bet. It really doesn't have to be that complicated. And believe me, the number one thing that I try to do other than get an edge is try to idiot-proof all this stuff so that I don't end up being an idiot. But here we go. Projections right now over at FTNBets.com have Travis Kelce scoring 0.6 touchdowns, 0.60. In other words, he has a 60% chance of scoring a touchdown. Compare that to the 53% chance that implied probability suggests. We have 7% in our favor. We have a little bit of an edge on this line. In fact, this line is really playable until you get up to about -125, -130. So for Travis Kelce, like I said, 3 touchdowns in the playoffs, a 53% implied probability, a 60% chance of scoring a touchdown based on FTNBets.com projections. I like that play, even at -113. Now, believe me, when it comes to a anytime touchdown, I want to get a little bang for my buck. I do. I want to make the juice worth the squeeze. But by the same token, if you want I'm never going to say there's a surefire bet on the board, but if you want a bet that has a good probability, a good chance of hitting, this is a good one, -113. But I want to roll through a couple other anytime touchdown numbers so we can get, a better sense of the market here. So let's go to A.J. Brown. Now, A.J. Brown had 11 touchdowns in the regular season. He was a rousing success, right? Howie Roseman makes the power move, goes out, gets an alpha for Jalen Hurts, and it worked. We're like gangbusters, 11 touchdowns on the season. But he hasn't scored since week 17, so there's some intrigue here. Right now, +127. All right, so we'll do our fancy pants little math here. Pretend this is a calculator. That gets us to implied probability of 44%. If you're wondering how I'm getting this, you can plug into your search engine of choice implied probability from odds, and you'll be able to see how it's calculated. There are, in fact, sites that calculate it for you. So it's a 44% chance. Right now, projections at FTNBets.com have A.J. Brown with a 49% chance of scoring a touchdown. So again, here we have another situation where we have a slight edge. So we're going to take that edge. If you think about it, most likely to score a touchdown in this game, sure. Kelce would be up there. Jalen Hurts will be up there, and I'm going to get to him in a second. But A.J. Brown is also right in the mix. You're getting a little bit more bang for your buck here, too, at +127 than you are with Travis Kelce's line of -113. So I actually like that one. Miles Sanders has the same exact odds, +127. It's interesting with Miles Sanders compared to A.J. Brown. We can't just necessarily say, rushing touchdown. We're going to combine the probabilities from his rushing and receiving touchdowns, and we do that. He actually has a 47% chance based on our projections right now. Of course, he did score those 2 rushing touchdowns in the conference championship game against the San Francisco 49ers. If there's going to be a rushing touchdown in this game, he, other than Jalen Hurts, obviously is the most likely to do so. We have a slighter edge here, though. This is one where the edge, it's enough to maybe make this bet playable, but I wouldn't fault you on passing on it. I often say that you don't have to bet everything. You don't have to go out there and place wagers on every last betting market. Like, yes, it's fun to have action in play, but it's more fun to win our bets. So if you wanted to pass on that one, I get that one totally. There's enough edge to make it worth playable. But interestingly enough, probably the best bet on the board in terms of anytime touchdowns, the one that gives us the biggest edge, because a lot of them simply don't give us an edge. They just don't give us an edge. We're on the wrong side of expected value. Jalen Hurts, anytime touchdown, +112. Now, those are short odds. They're shorter odds than A.J. Brown. They're shorter odds than Miles Sanders. They're some of the shortest odds on the board for an anytime touchdown. But I'm giving him a 63% chance of scoring a rushing touchdown in this game. He's scored in 5 of his last 6 games. Even with the banged-up shoulder, he's still putting the ball in the end zone as a runner. Your applied probability is 47%. That's one of the biggest edges on the board when it comes to player props right now. Absolutely love the Jalen Hurts line. And again, even if it doesn't happen, even if he doesn't score, I still want to be on the right side of edge, and this is absolutely it right there. So there you go. Anytime touchdown, it's a fun wager. But if you really want to get into player props, I find that, you play the hits, you stick to the classics, passing yards, rushing yards, receiving yards. So I wanted to roll through some of these. They're not all going to be playable, and we don't have to play them all. But some of them are going to be very playable. Some of them are going to be, I'll be honest, some of them are a couple, they're sexy. They're sexy plays. But let me talk quickly about that psychology, too, as we get into passing yards. So something I mentioned earlier in this video, right? People love to bet overs. And when people bet overs, and they continue to bet overs, the line moves up. And we've seen this over the course of the week, and they will bet overs specifically on player props with favorite players. So Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Travis Kelce. The big-name players tend to draw a lot of money in on their overs. We saw it with Patrick Mahomes so far this week with his passing yards line. Right now, as I'm recording this, Caesars SportsBook has this line at 294.5. All right, 294.5 is a big line. Like, that's a big line. I know that sometimes we're spoiled in this world of Madden and fantasy football, and we always think high numbers, but I will tell you, that is a big boy line. Big line right there. And I think the line's actually going to continue to go up because I do think we're going to see more money come in on that over, casual money as it flows through the week. People are only going to look to the last game, in which he did go over. He did go over this line, but he's only been over in 2 of his last 5 games. Mahomes obviously dealing with the ankle issue, though he should be a lot better than where he was in his last contest, and that honestly didn't impact his passing performance. But we have to look at this not just from a Mahomes standpoint, because, hey, when it's from a Mahomes standpoint, everything's amazing. Let's look at this in terms of also who he's facing on the other side of the football. The Eagles have a historically good pass rush. In fact, if they record 4 more sacks, they will tie the all-time record, including regular season and postseason. The 1984 Chicago Bears currently hold that. It's interesting it's not the 85 Bears, right? The 85 Bears are second. But the 84 Bears, that's been the pantheon of pass rush. And now here we are, the 2022 Philadelphia Eagles pass rush with 4 dudes, double-digit sacks. That's outrageous. So these guys are going to be after Mahomes. Now, we know he has escapability. But beyond that, it's not just the pass rush. When you're throwing against the Eagles, not only do you have to get that ball out quick because those dogs are coming after you with their ears pinned back, you have to throw into coverage that features Darius Slay, big play Slay, and James Bradberry, who, we didn't quite know what James Bradberry was going to be coming into Philadelphia. We didn't know if he had reached his expiration date in New York and he was going to be a flop. No, he was not a flop, and I think there's a fair argument to be made that he played as good, if not better, than Darius Slay this season. Phenomenal coverage. Not only that, Avonte Maddox is going to play in this game. That's huge for them. When they don't have Maddox on the field, C.J. Gardner-Johnson has to kick to the slot, cover the slot, and he's a bit of a liability for him there. And we saw it against the Giants. The only guy to do anything in the passing game for the Giants was Richie James. Richie James was in the slot. I mean, there's no coincidence here. So having Avonte Maddox out there is going to be huge, covering the slot for them. Not that, there's any one wide receiver that's going to benefit. There's no one guy that stands out in that group of wideouts I talked about earlier. But still, I digress. You have a pass rush coming after you. You have a very good secondary that you're throwing after. And this line is creeping up towards 300. Something does not compute. Don't be afraid to bet an under if you have an edge on the under. And I know, people don't want to bet unders. People love betting those overs. But honestly, this is what I'm going to wait on. And I'm going to wait and see, does this creep up to 298.5, 299.5, 300.5? Do we creep up into that range? Because if we do, then it is time to spring into action and hammer that under. Right now, projections over at FTNBets.com has him at 284.5, which is a big number, by the way. We're not playing tiddlywinks when we project him out at almost 285 yards. But this number is just too high for him. Now, the opposite scenario for Jalen Hurts, who, by the way, is also facing a pretty epic pass rush, a defensive interior that, is one of the tops in the league. When you have Chris Jones coming after you in the pass rush, I mean, that guy is an absolute animal. And it's going to be challenging for Jalen Hurts, though he won't drop back to pass anywhere near as much as Patrick Mahomes. But his line right now, Caesars SportsBook has this at 241.5. It's a good line. I mean, there's sometimes you just have to look at it and be like, all right, it's a good line. There's not much we can do there with that line one way or the other. I know his passing performance in the conference championship game. I know I saw, but did he need to throw the football? He didn't. He didn't need to throw it. Is he going to need to throw the football against Patrick Mahomes when Patrick Mahomes is going to keep going out on the field every time you come off the field and putting points on the board? Yes, he's going to have to throw a little bit more. But 241.5 is a good line. It's a good line. Right now I'm projecting him at 238.7. Yes, in theory, you do have an under in play there, but it's such a small difference from the projection to the line that I don't want to play it. Same thing with completions and attempts. Every so often, that's a betting market that I will dip my toes in those waters. But these lines are really, really well set right now. You have Mahomes at 25.5 completions, 38.5 attempts. Great lines. Jalen Hurts, 20.5 completions, 31.5 attempts. Great lines. There's no edge on those. We don't need to get that action in play. So we're going to pass on those right now. And I often pass on the passing touchdowns as well. Very often you'll only get 1.5 passing touchdowns, and then the juice will be pretty high on one side or the other. The odds won't be in your favor on one side or the other. So typically pass on those. So let me move over to rushing yards. I do like rushing yards. That's probably I think it's my favorite. If I had to choose a favorite, I like a lot of betting markets, but it's been my favorite. It's been one of the best to me over the years because I feel like I can project out volume and efficiency the best at that particular stat, more so than receiving, because receiving you have to project out targets, then efficiency with those targets, then efficiency with the receptions. So rushing yards, really, you're just projecting out attempts and then efficiency from there. And what's fascinating about this game is I've detailed the pass defenses are quite good. The pass rushes are elite on both sides. Maybe you could poke some holes in the secondary a little bit of Kansas City because they are young, but they're going to have a L'Jarius Sneed who just cleared concussion protocol. They're going to have a L'Jarius Sneed on the field. So it's tough. It's going to be tough in the passing game. If there are deficiencies here, though, it would be the run game. Now, Kansas City's defense just in general over the last month and a half, 2 months, has really stiffened up. Philadelphia, though, you could run on them. In theory, you could run on either one of these defenses. So I think these are the markets to attack. Let's talk about Kansas City first. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was activated off of injured reserve. He's not a factor. Just going to be plain and simple. He's not a factor. I know he's a name that we know. Therefore, we might gravitate to that name. But as far as we're concerned here, he's not going to be a factor in this game. So let's talk about Isaiah Pacheco and Jet McKinnon, Jerick McKinnon on the Kansas City side. Pacheco, the primary early down runner for Kansas City. McKinnon, passing down back, will give you a little bit of pop in the run game, but obviously hasn't done much there recently. Right now, the line's 48.5 for Pacheco, 20.5 for McKinnon. I actually like both of those lines on the over. And, hey, we like betting overs, all right? So 52.4 is what we're currently projecting out Pacheco. Sometimes when it comes to sports betting, the early worm gets the bet, gets the good wager, because if you wait a little bit too long, you don't get the line. The line moves up, and then you're sitting there. You don't have as much edge. So this would be one I'm grabbing at 48.5. I have 4 yards on the over. You think about it from the vantage point of, is he going to average 4 yards per carry? All right, if he averages 4 yards per carry, does he get 12 or 13 carries, right? If he gets 13 carries, 4 yards per carry, bang, we're over. And that's basically what I'm projecting him at here. So I like that one. For McKinnon, we're at 20.5. McKinnon's going to be a little bit trickier because, again, he may not be heavily featured in the run game. If this is one of those alternate game scripts, because we're so focused on the passing game for both of these teams, but the alternate game script where it is run heavy, McKinnon could feature there. So that one is not as good as tasty as the Pacheco, but 20.5 is the line. I got him at 23.5 projected yards. Let's go to the other side. Miles Sanders, 59.5. That's a bigger line, obviously, than what we have on Pacheco, and certainly much bigger on McKinnon. And honestly, this one is a pass for me. I do have a slight over at 60.9, nice, but 59.5. I can't take that 1 yard and run with it. So we're going to pass on that one. Jalen Hurts. People like betting overs, right? 50.5. We've reached 50.5 with Jalen Hurts. This line is going to keep going up. flat out, it's going to keep going up. And guess what? Since he has returned from the injury, so over the last 3 games, since he's had that shoulder issue, he is not running the football anywhere near as much where his explode. Now, he's running it and he's doing key things, but he is not ripping off those explosive runs. You can see maybe he's shying away from contact, and who can blame him just a little bit. I have the under on this one. And I'm going to let this line keep going up, and I'm going to take an under on that one right there. An X-Factor player for me in this game real quick, Kenny Gainwell, 19.5 rushing yards. Kenneth Gainwell could easily go up over that. He's seen his usage dramatically increase in the playoffs, projecting out at 23.1 rushing yards. So you got a nice little cushion there. Rushing and receiving yards is another fun one. You can combine those two. Usually you're really just looking at running backs here. Occasionally you might have like a Deebo Samuel type wide receiver who does, carry the football. But let's focus in on those guys again: McKinnon, Pacheco, Sanders, Gainwell. McKinnon is at 44.5. Right now I have him at 50 on the nose. That's one of the better lines on the board right now. Now, he hasn't gone over. You might say, hey, Jeff, he hasn't gone over this since week 17. And I'd say, you're right. He hasn't. But again, I do think this is going to be a game that features the run game more so than a lot of people are expecting. And that's why he is projecting out a little bit higher. Pacheco, 69.5 is too high. I am at 66. I'm not going to play that one. Miles Sanders, 67.5. I see you, Caesars Sportsbook. I'm at 67. I mean, we're right there. We're right on that one. And same thing with Kenny Gainwell. This is even closer. Caesars, like mine's, 34.5. I'm at 34.8. So I'm not going with those. Receiving yards. Coming down the home stretch here. Travis Kelce, 79.5. It's a big line. And that one is one that is really hard to play. I love Travis Kelce. If there's a guy who's going to go over that line, it is him. But I just can't play a line where I don't have edge. And I'm actually under that just slightly. I have him at 78.5. And honestly, this line could keep going up. I just don't think there's a play in there. Right, we're going to play the touchdown line on or the anytime touchdown on Travis Kelce. I just don't see the receiving yards working. Let me go through A.J. Brown, 71.5. This one's actually not that bad. A.J. Brown can make explosive big plays for this Philadelphia Eagles team. He may not have a lot of the target volume that you're going to see for Travis Kelce, but I'm projecting him out right now at 75 yards on the nose. So you got a 3.5-yard cushion. You're not going to get big cushions at this time of the year, by the way, on most player prop lines. So I actually like that. As I mentioned, L'Jarius Sneed is there. But you're talking about Trent McDuffie, who A.J. Brown, if he gets up against him, is going to have a nice size advantage. And then Jalen Watson, these rookie corners. A.J. Brown has an advantage on those guys. So does Devontae Smith, but his line's a lot better. 61.5 for Devontae Smith. I'm at 60.9, which is just too tight right there. Dallas Goedert rounding out these receiving yards props. 48.5 receiving yards. I'm at 52.3, so that's one of the better on the board here. He didn't go over this line in the conference championships, but he did go over it divisional round. More importantly, though, has had 5 catches in each of his last 3, or actually more than 5 because he had 6 catches 3 games ago. So Dallas Goedert gives us a little bit there. I would love to be able to give you receptions props right now, but unfortunately, I'm not seeing any lines that I like. If I get any more, I am going to give them to you. And in fact, tomorrow I'm going to do some more content here from the Super Bowl, where I'm going to get into some fun stuff a little bit. I got a Marquez Valdez-Scantling play that is just straight fire. I absolutely love the MVS play. We're going to talk some parlays on that in that content too, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Of course, make sure you head on over to FTNBets.com. We have great offers for Caesars Sportsbook right now in your state, so go check it out, click through, get your deposit bonuses, and put that money in play on all of these fun player props. Shout out to Caesars Sportsbook for the use of this set. This thing is glorious right now. It's absolutely glorious. The Super Bowl is going on all around us here in Radio Row. It has been fantastic. By the way, you can follow along with me on social media. If you want to troll me on Twitter, I'm here for you. At Jeff Ratcliffe on Twitter. Hit me up there. And again, FTNBets.com. I'll catch you on the flip side for some more content here from the Super Bowl. I'm Jeff Ratcliffe, and I'm out.